Hello and welcome to our week 7 discussion. This week we're using Project Muse and sources from there to further our research studies. And so I basically wanted to take this opportunity to kind of expand my research on things that kind of all my things kind of tie in together that I'm interested in to work on. But basically, hopefully my dissertation title is going to be The War Between Science and Religion, that I'm actually carrying on a tradition from Charles Towns, who I'm writing a book about, his biography actually. And so basically there are three works that were found that I thought were quite interesting, and they tie back to one central theme, and that would be the Copernican revolution. Thomas Kuhn in probably 1940s and 50s came up with this idea of a paradigm shift that Dr. Schultz mentions in the lectures either last week or this week, that there are certain scientific revolutions that occur in which we're going in one direction and we suddenly do a 180 and go in the other direction. The first of those three that he identifies, Copernicus, was one of great interest to me. And so basically, Parker Barker has a work called Constructing Copernicus in Perspectives on Science. And he quotes Kuhn, who said that heliocentrism, or the move to a sun-centered universe, is the single most important idea that we associate with Copernicus. And then, of course, Kepler follows Copernicus in the 1540s with his mathematical proofs that indicate Copernicus was correct. And then Galileo, of course, proved it with his telescope in the 1600s, which got him in trouble with the Inquisition and the church and their position on science and all those things. Copernicus's book on revelations of the planets was a major volley in the war between science and religion, and challenged the church's teachings, which they had believed for centuries, that the earth was the center of the universe, that everything revolved around us, and that we're the apple of God's eye. So Barker basically he discusses Kepler's mathematical proofs of Copernicus and his scientific revolution, and the work is important in how we understand Kepler's work, how it was understood in the 1500s, and more importantly, how that has changed through the centuries. The second work that I want to highlight is Owen Gingerich, who's writing Kepler Then and Now in Perspectives on Science. It's quite interesting because he looks at why Kepler was not as widely known as either Galileo, and especially Galileo and Copernicus. And his work didn't get translated, even though much of it was in support of Copernicus's revolution and his theory, until probably the 1950s, which I think was triggered probably by Thomas Kuhn's ideas on scientific revolutions. There were three of those that he identified: Copernicus, Darwin, and Einstein, as being these earth-shaking ideas that changed the world. On Gingerich, I wanted to just share with you something of interest with him. I followed him for a long time, but he wrote a book called, his doctoral dissertation was on the writings of Copernicus on revolutions of planets. And he published a book called The Book Nobody Read, because basically the Catholic Church's response to Copernicus's book on revelations of planets was that nobody read it. And Gingerich, as a part of his dissertation, looked up the 1,000 extant copies, original copies of the book, and then those secondary copies, and looked at the margins of the book to see if any famous astronomers were making notes, because it seems as long as there have been books, there have been writers like us who are historians who make margins in writing notes in the margin. And sure enough, almost all of those that belong to famous astronomers had notes, including Tycho Brahe and others, in the margin. And interestingly, Gingerich came to Clemson, and we had a second edition Copernicus in our archives, and he actually came there to check that as well. We also had a first edition Optics by Newton, which is also quite interesting. But so Gingerich has always written about those kinds of issues, and this book is no different. He's talking about why Kepler's writings were not bothered with until we get into this idea of scientific revolutions. The third work is William Shea, assessing the relationship between science and religion. And again, he deals with Copernicus and Galileo as the first contenders in this battle over science and religion. Galileo was brought up by the Inquisition twice. The first time he was brought up for teaching Copernican theory in Padua, and as fate would have it, his boyhood friend that he played stickball in the streets with was now the Pope, and the Pope refused to let them burn him at the stake and gave him a warning, sent him home, and said, "Don't do this anymore. Don't teach this theory." That lasted about a year. Galileo was brought back up on a second time before the Inquisition, and again the Pope intervened, and this time Galileo was put under house arrest, not allowed to meet or teach people. So we see the battle for this idea of the war between science and religion growing, and it will grow through the 1800s, of course, and then come to a nexus, basically, as I've said before, in the 1925 Scopes trial and since. And in certain ways, that battle is still going strong today in our country more than anywhere else in the world, but we still see the warfare between science and religion that I hope to study further and deal with, as I've told you before. Thank you.